Hey folks, Roland Martin here with Roland Martin Unfiltered, broadcasting live from Indianapolis, Indiana, where the Stewart Speaker Series, they have their State of Black Issues taking place. I'll be, I don't know if I'm moderating this panel, I'm sitting on it. I'm one of the two, but of course, joining us on the panel will be Reverend Al Sharpton, Susan Taylor, and also Michael Eric Dyson. And joining us right now is Reverend Sharpton. Reverend, good to see you.
Good to be with you, Roland.
There are a lot of things happening. First of all, one of the top things we were going to talk about on the show is what's happening in Georgia. We're seeing what's happening there in Missouri, what's happening with Native Americans in North Dakota as well. I mean, this is a consistent pattern of Republicans using voter suppression tactics. In fact, in this state, Greg Palast has reported hundreds of thousands of people who have been purged from the voting rolls in the past several years.
Indiana has had the purging problem. North Dakota doing it to Native Americans. We've seen it in North Carolina. And, of course, what Georgia's doing would make Jim Crow blush. This whole asinine thing of if an apostrophe is not there, if Tom says Thomas on his registration, all of these are ways to undermine our right to vote. It should not discourage us. It should make us more determined. And one of the things that we need to talk about is how we double up our efforts and come out in larger numbers to show that we cannot and will not be suppressed. It is clearly their attitude that they know that they will be defeated, so they've got to cheat.
And one of the things that also that jumps out, and I've been saying this for the last several years, Black Republicans refuse to stand as a group and condemn the Republican Party. People will individually say on my show, this isn't right, it isn't fair, it's not just. And I've been saying, okay, I want to see why. I want to see a multitude of Black Republicans stand before the Republican National Committee in D.C. and say to the party, stop suppressing the votes of Black people.
I think you're right. I think also that we've not seen Black Republicans stand up and say, what is our offer or counter agenda, rather than just attacking the Democrats or attacking civil rights leaders or attacking academicians. Because I remember when I was just coming into the movement as a kid, you had Black Republicans that had a Black agenda.
Senator Edward Brooke, Massachusetts, of course. You
elected in 68. When Shirley Chisholm ran in 72, you had Arthur Fletcher in the Nixon administration who wrote affirmative action.
Right.
People don't understand affirmative action came from Undersecretary of Labor, a Black Republican, Arthur Fletcher. So where is the Black agenda Black Republicans coming? They keep saying, well, don't everybody go with the Democrats. Well, put some on the table that you can get your party to support and your president. There is no Black agenda in the Republican side. And I think that that is a part and parcel of what you've been saying about they won't even stand up to protect the right to vote.
And, of course, Colin Powell did. He did it in front of Governor Pat McCrory in North Carolina. He was sitting in front. He said, what you are doing with voter ID in this state is wrong. And, of course, the federal courts ruled that they had a laser-like targeting of Black voters. We see, last question for you, we see critical races happening. Obviously, Andrew Gillum in Florida up in the polls there. Basically, it's tied in Georgia with Stacey Abrams against Brian Kemp. Ben Jealous is down big time to Larry Hogan in Maryland. And then, of course, we're seeing potentially you could have anywhere from 52 to 56 members of the Congressional Black Caucus, depending on what happens in November as well. And so from Democratic Party standpoint, granted, it's getting ahead, but if Democrats take over the House, Black folks are going to make a strong case. It's time for a Black Speaker of the House.
No doubt about it. It's time for a Black Speaker of the House. And let me say, we've not, I met with 100 ministers here today. One of the things I was saying is we've got to remember our history, and it's not even that distant history. We are acting like we can't elect 3 Black governors, and as you accurately said, 56 to 60 Black members of Congress, and have a Black Speaker. We just elected and reelected a Black president. I mean, do we forget our ability to move forward? The least we should be able to do is get 2 or 3 governors and 50 some odd congressmen after what we showed the world we could do with Obama in our lifetime. Unless you 3 years old, you was alive during that time. So we don't have to go back to Frederick Douglass. In our lifetime, we elected and reelected a Black president. The least we should do is be able to come in with some governors and a huge jump in Black caucus members. And let me say this, part of the problem is that voices have been cut off. for someone like you, Roland Martin, as the voice of Black America, not to have major outlets. They have not won the fight. They've cut off the ring.
Right. And
we need to also address how they've cut off our ability to communicate. In our meeting here today with the ministers, King Rowe was here. Used to be a radio announcer. There used to be over 300 Black-owned radio stations.
Yep.
Now we're down to under 60. There used to be 10 disc jockeys could make or break a record. Black. Frankie Crocker, Rodney Jones, where you knew Chicago and all. Now it's all controlled and prescribed. So they feel they can take a Kanye and do what they want because we can't undercut them and take them off the air because we don't even control our stations anymore. We've got to get the microphone back so we can mobilize our people.
Well, I had a sister who of course, sent me a tweet yesterday. She said, but she says, but are you being blackballed? What's going on? I said, look, I'm not waiting for somebody else to do to create it. I said, we created this platform here. We did 8 million plus views last month. We're going to keep building it. And so at the end of the day, we got to do the same thing other folks are doing. Take advantage of technology and create our own.
No, you've done that admirably, but it's still
I agree.
Right.
Oh, I got you.
And I'm saying you need to do both and.
Yep.
Because I think that, from when you were a youngster and all the way through the Chicago Defender, you paid the dues. And when I see them putting other people out there as commentators who don't even know what they're talking about and who are experts at reading rather than talking about people that have been in the trenches. I can't remember a major march in the last 35 years that I've been out here nationally that you were not there. So it is not that you're giving an opinion of an opinion that you read.
Right.
You were there.
Right.
Whether you agreed with us or disagreed.
In the room.
And we could have disagreements, but you were in the room and said, no, that ain't true about so-and-so, or that is true. But I think that cuts off our history because it's bigger than our personality.
Absolutely.
And I think that I wanted to say that while we are Roland Martin unfiltered.
I appreciate it, Reverend Sharpton. Thanks so much.
All right,
I appreciate it. See you on the panel in just a second. Right now, folks, we're going to welcome the longtime leader of Essence Magazine, Susan Taylor, of course, who is the founder of National Care's Mentoring Project. So, Susan, step on in here. Always good to see you. First and foremost, we had Latasha Brown on yesterday with Black Votes Matter. Also, I've talked to DeWanna Watson, some of the others. When you see these Black women who are not waiting for permission, who are traveling around the country, who are raising money, as someone who was encouraging this for so many years at Essence, got to make you feel good.
More than that. I tell you, I'm jumping for joy. Black women have always had a voice, but those voices haven't always been heard. And that's really what Essence was created to do. And this is a moment when women, and particularly Black women, we have certainly come into the fullness of our power. And we know who we are. We're moving together with strategy, with purpose, and we are the tipping point of every election right now. So the challenge is really getting people to vote, in this midterm election, getting the millennials to come out, getting pastors to organize the congregations. That is something I feel so strongly. Don't you remember when people who had cars used to go and pick up the folks in the neighborhood and take them to the polls, make sure people were registered? We're not doing that much anymore. Do you see it anywhere in the country?
I mean, it's happening some, but one of the things that is very interesting, I remember with the election of Obama in 2008, 2012, people would say, I want to do something, and I would say, okay, start just where you are. I said, if you're living in Charlotte, stop focusing on what's happening in Oakland. Focus exactly what's happening in your city. And I think, and this may sound basic, but most folks, the phrase, when you don't know, you don't know. I think a lot of people really want to do something, but they don't even understand the power that they have. Yes, taking your car and driving for people is just as important as sending a tweet. In fact, it's even more important. Because you've gotten them there.
Right. And that's what I'm about. That's what I want to. This is my hope, that we can come together as a community and have a plan. We don't have a plan, Roland, and we need a plan. It doesn't have to be a 15-point plan. How about a 3 or 4-point plan?
Well, that was one of the things that we talked about at the Poor People's Campaign with Reverend Barber, where you talked about that as well, in terms of even what you're doing on the mentoring side. People were sitting here saying, oh my goodness, we need mentoring. This is happening with our kids. And your deal was like, okay, so what are we going to do? Fine, let's go. Let's actually create something to actually do that.
Why not? If there's a need, fill it. Have everything we need. Everything we need except the glue that connects us. You know, we do a lot of talking, we do a lot of editorializing, but we don't move together strategically with an end goal. You know, the last time that I can think of, and I ask scholars about this all the time, the last time that we saw our people really create a movement and see it to fruition was really the Montgomery bus boycott. You know, there was Jenna, we went. Healthcare, we saw it almost eroded. There was no plan. I mean, there wasn't a plan around.
Those were moments, not movements.
That's right. But I'm talking about something as critical as healthcare.
Right.
Watching the Affordable Care Act be so threatened, but I didn't see folks around the country, African American people, really gathering together, saying this is what we're going to do. We're going to stand up. We're going to shout. We're going to do what we have to do to protect it. We do a lot of talking to one another in small groups, but not en masse. And that's really what is needed right now.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I also fundamentally believe we have to have a strong black media that is not solely focused on entertainment and gossip and sports, but that's actually feeding the minds of our people. Because, and again, and first of all, there's a place for it. There's a place for sports. There's a place for entertainment. But when I look at either our black cable networks, the overabundance of comedies and things along those lines, if you're not feeding our folks information, and they don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. They don't know how to get involved.
Self-awareness, to me, is the critical piece. We hunger to laugh. People come for the party and not. Okay, we can laugh. We can have the comedies. We can have what do we have left in terms of black news shows? If we didn't have you, we'd have nothing. So what are we going to do about it? What's the solution? Tell me.
Well, I'll tell you, that's one of the reasons why, again, when I was a woman said this tweet yesterday, and she was, but it's a shame this happened. I said, look, and this is absolutely true. When I sat in the office, and Alfred Liggins, the CEO of TV One, told me they were canceling News One now. As he was talking, I was planning. I didn't get ticked. I didn't get mad. I didn't get angry.
You knew it was coming?
Yeah, I knew it was coming because the moment you started, I'm always anticipating it's going to end. So all this digital stuff that we've been doing, I was actually doing while I was there. And what I'm trying to get our folks to understand is that, which is one of the reasons why we created our Bring the Funk fan club, I also make the point we have to fund our freedom, something you also understand as well. And I'm like, look, if we say we need this, how do we also make it happen? So I say, look, our target goal is to get 20,000 mile followers to give a minimum of $50, course of a year, $4 a month, 14 cents a day to fund our freedom. And so by launching this, and people said, yeah, but what about this network? I said, I can't wait on them to say, we're going to give you a show. We have to create it. So just what Robert Abbott did, just what Frederick Douglass did with the North Star, what Ida B. Wells Barnett did, what all of our pioneers did. They said, we're not going to just wait. And I think that's where we have to be.
Have you launched?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we launched in September, and so it's been going well so far. Roland Martin Unfiltered, and it's going well. And so, again, it is about informing our folks and telling our story. And so and that's it. And there's not waiting. I think a lot of us, we're waiting for somebody to create the plan versus us saying we're going to create it. So the reason I communicate with Dr. Barber, I'm like, every time you're doing something, you're going to be on. So you're doing this, we're going to tell our people. So someone can't say, well, I wish we knew. No. Here's a platform. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Periscope. We stream 10, 12 times a day. So you can't, so if somebody says, I don't know, I'm like, no. If you don't know, you're either not following or you're purposely not paying attention. Right. So we're going to make it happen.
Okay, well,
we can look forward to great conversation. Okay, I got you. Hold up, I got the card right here. You know? So we got it. We can look forward to great conversation tonight here in Indianapolis. And so we'll chat in a second.
Okay.
All right then. Always good seeing you. You forgot to give them the website, National Cares Mentoring.
National Cares Mentoring. Please log on to caresmentoring.org.
Gala, February 11th, 2019 in New York City.
New York City.
All right. I'll be doing the auction again. So all y'all who are going to be there, y'all know I got that money last time. I'll be getting that money this time as well.
Big time.
Susan, I appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. Always good to see you. Joining us, the loquacious one. I use that big word on purpose for him. Reverend Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, who is also one of the panelists for our conversation today. And again, my apologies to my guests back in the studio. Again, we were supposed to, this news coverage was supposed to be earlier. It ended while we actually went live. Right. And look, when it happens, you grab them while you got them. So I was glad to have you here. Dr. Dyson, good to see you.
Good to see you, sir.
One of the things that, as we're looking at what's happening right now in this country, I'm seeing people tweet, oh my God, nobody can beat, Y'all keep on worrying about it. Nobody can beat Trump. What's going to be happening in 2020? I think the mistake that people are making is you can't focus on 2020 until you deal with what's happening in less than 30 days.
That's right. These midterms are important. I'm so glad you said that, because what's at stake? The House is at stake. The so-called blue wave that we hope to ride. If we don't take the House back, if you've got the Supreme Court, if you've got the Senate, and you've got the House, then you've got the consensus of a right-wing conservative junta operate in this culture. If we can take back the House, we can begin to dismantle some of the machinery of the right-wing assault and put Trump in check.
But it's also what's happening on the local level. And just a couple
down ballot in local.
Just a couple of minutes, I'm going to be talking to Sean Shaw, who is running for Attorney General in Florida.
That's extremely important.
You're talking about the chief law enforcement officer of the state. Again, in a couple of minutes, folks, we'll be talking with Sean Shaw. That's one of those critical races.
He's in Florida, right?
In Florida.
Well, think about it. Stand your ground. Think about it. Trayvon Martin. Think about what happens in Florida. The young man, his name escapes me, who was shot in the chest. Jordan Davis, but the other guy who was shot in the chest when he tried to protect his girlfriend. So the reality is that those down ballot issues are extremely important. And who determines whether or not cops are held to account? Prosecutors. They're on the local level.
Local DAs.
Look at what happened in Ferguson with Wesley Bell, and look what happened in Philadelphia, and look what happened in Chicago.
Right.
So to your point, it's extremely important. But if we don't get out there, we don't treat this like an important race, because one thing the right wing has done that other progressives haven't done, they've understood that when you vote for president, you ain't just voting for no president. You're voting for the Supreme Court. You're voting for who will shift the legal consensus over the next 25 years. And the federal judiciary, Trump is reshaping it right as we speak.
All right, well, Dr. Dice, we look forward to our conversation here in Indianapolis.
All right,
we'll chat soon about your book on the show.
The Black Riot Secrets. I'm just trying to tell you, give my man a job.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much. Speaking of Sean Shaw, he joins us right now. Of course, he is running for Attorney General in Florida. Sean, glad to have you on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Roland, I'm just starstruck with all your guests that you just had, brother. I want to hear them keep talking. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, I know you want we want to hear them keep talking as well, but we've been having you on hold for quite some time, and so I want to go ahead and get to you as we speak. First and foremost, again, when you look at these races, there have been very few African Americans who have been attorney generals in the United States. Roland Burrs, of course, in the state of Illinois, to be the chief law enforcement officer of Florida. That is critical when you look at mass incarceration, when you look at all of these major legal decisions happening all across this country, but definitely in the state of Florida.
You're exactly right. I was hearing Dr. Dyson talk about it. We are where Trayvon Martin happened. We are where Marquise McLaughlin recently happened, and Reverend Al, I heard, was just a guest. He came down and helped us with that situation. Florida has a problem. We have got to do something about our stand your ground, but when you couple that with the permissive gun laws that you have in Florida, you have a recipe for disaster. And listen, I'm someone who believes we are in dire need of criminal justice reform. And you're not going to get criminal justice reform in Florida unless you are able to elect Andrew Gillum as the governor and myself as the attorney general. Those things are critical.
And I think when you look at that, but also Secretary of State positions, those are the critical positions when it comes to voting decisions in each state as well. And so the person sitting in those seats matter. And look, let's just be honest. Democrats have had a very difficult time embracing and electing African Americans to statewide offices. Over the last decade, you've actually had more Republicans, I believe, who've been elected statewide or unstatewide tickets than Democrats. The party has to also understand they can't solely depend upon black folks to be political sharecroppers, electing others to office and not electing African Americans to statewide offices.
Roland, you're exactly right. What happened this cycle, particularly in Florida and Georgia, where African American, not just Democrats, but extremely progressive Democrats were elected to represent their parties in these gubernatorial primaries, and in my case, the attorney general primary. You know, there's 6, I think, African Americans running for attorney general as the nominees for their party around the country this cycle. This is a cycle where we can do a lot of good things, and these offices are tremendously important. If you want to push back against Trump's agenda, the best way to do it is to elect attorney generals who are willing to push back, because it's not Congress and it is not the Senate. It is progressive attorney generals around the country who won't stand up for what he's doing. That's how you push back.
What is the most fundamental, what's the most important issue that you're championing as to why you want folks in Florida to elect you as Attorney General?
Well, one is around guns, and that has to do with stand your ground. That law needs to be repealed, not only because of what's been going on, but now we got a video. And if your viewers and listeners have seen the video of Brother Marquise McLaughlin being gunned down in a parking lot here in Clearwater, Florida, when he was standing up for his family, and the person that did it didn't go to jail that night. He spent the night with his family when Brother Marquise's family watched him get gunned down. And that's the law of the state of Florida. That's not okay. It needs to be repealed. It needs to go away. We're going to work very hard to do away with that law. And the next thing is health care, right? This attack on the Affordable Health Care Act by Republican attorneys general around the country is off base. It's wrong legally, and it needs to stop. Florida is a part of that lawsuit to end it right now. The minute I'm elected, Florida will leave that lawsuit.
All right, Sean, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Good luck in your race for Florida Attorney General. Folks, we thank Sean Shaw for joining us at Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Roland, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, I want to go to my panel, which, of course, is assembled there in Washington, D.C. First and foremost, let me give a shout-out to Spencer Overton. Actually, before I go to the panel, let me give you these voter registration deadlines, please. First and foremost, pull the graphic up. October 16th, if you're living in Kansas, Maryland, New Jersey, Oregon, and West Virginia, Kansas, Maryland, New Jersey, Oregon, West Virginia. October 16th is your voter registration deadline. October 17th, if you live in Massachusetts and South Carolina, that is your deadline. October 17th, Massachusetts and South Carolina. October 18th, Nevada is your deadline to register. There's also an African-American who's running for Attorney General there, Aaron Ford, in the state of Nevada. You also, of course, have Stephen Horsford, former member of Congress, who is trying to return to Congress from Nevada in a very tight race. So all the folks in Nevada, October 18th. October 22nd, if you live in Alabama and California, crucial elections there where Democrats want to try to win as many of those California House seats that could potentially lead them to take over the House. That deadline is October 22nd, Alabama and California. Also, South Dakota is October 22nd. And in Nebraska, October 26th, that is your voter registration deadline. As we said, folks, lots of different things have been happening all across this country when it comes to voting. So much of the attention is focused on that. And what our goal, of course, is to make sure that you are registered and you are ready as well. Spencer Overton joins us. He's the president of the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. Jamal Simmons is the host of Hill.TV Live. And also Rena Shabarar is also joins us as well, political strategist. And say it again, I can't hear. Okay, got it. And also Rashad Robinson, of course, he's the president of Color of Change. Rena, I want to start with you. I made this point earlier to all the Black Republicans who've been on the show. And again, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. I've always said that, as Reverend Sharpton said here, if Republicans actually offer a message that might be appealing to black folks, they actually might get more than 6 or 8% of the black vote. There are examples of Republicans who have run in statewide races who have been able to do so. But I've made this point. As long as Republicans continue to suppress the vote and to play these games of keeping black folks and throwing up barriers, they are never going to get black folks to support them.
So, Roland, I talk a lot with women about ideology, and I think this will answer the question of where we're at right now. Modern era, let's talk about ideology and what I'm observing with black Republicans. I get a lot of mails from African-American Coalition's team. I get a lot of emails, I meant to say, not a lot of mails. But no, there's that too. Hold on, let me just go to the ideology. The problem is that black Republicans are lone foot soldiers in this fight. The ones that are all about MAGA, making America great again. They believe that minorities are winning under Trump. Like I said, I get emails from the RNC with that exact headline saying that minorities are winning under President Trump's policies.
I've been trying to find exactly where the winning has been taking place. All Trump can talk about is black unemployment. But if you look at the housing rate, if you look at what is happening in terms of investment, I mean, I can go down the line to show That's a flat-out lie.
Well, they want to talk prison reform. They want to talk unemployment, like you said, but they also want to talk about Obama's failures. As you know, Trump loves to compare numbers, and so they're conflating sort of some things that shouldn't go together. Okay, but like I said, what I'm seeing in this era is that Black Republicans are not subscribing to this narrative that Black folks are being pushed down. They're sort of in it for themselves. They really think that, well, we've always thought, right? A hand up is better than a hand out, and so when they see this moment, they are going back to that individualistic mentality that most Republicans hold. They don't think of themselves as a collective, and they just go forward in that direction of that I alone can be a part of this movement and affect change because the president alone can fix it. So it's a mixed bag, Roland. You're not going to win Black Republicans in this moment by getting them to think that we rise as people when we come together. They don't subscribe to that. It's an ideological difference.
Yeah, there's a certain hypocrisy here in terms of these libertarians who are suspicious of government, and yet they would erect barriers to people casting the most fundamental liberty they have in terms of the right to vote. Right now in Georgia, we have the fox guarding the henhouse in terms of Brian Kemp acting as Secretary of State, really holding hostage, 50,000 voter registration applications and ballots here. Right now, folks in Georgia have to vote early, vote early, vote early. It's so much easier to, frankly, make it and survive and not be picked off if you're voting earlier as opposed to waiting for Election Day.
Rashad.
Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is that Republicans have never really tried to win the Black vote. Most of the time when they've tried to appeal to Black voters over the last several decades, it's been to sort of placate white moderates, to help white moderates feel like the Republicans are not being racist. I would love there to be deeper alternatives for Black people. I would love there to be accountability so we can push all parties to be accountable to Black people. But like you said, Roland, when Republican Party is playing not just candidate but referee in a lot of these elections, are putting their hands on the scale to make things deeply unfair, and you see Republicans, Black Republicans, unwilling to push their own party, unwilling to stand up to their own party on these issues. As a person who runs a civil rights organization, you can Google the number of times we have pushed back on the Democrats on a whole host of things, even on some Black members of Congress and the CBC, on a whole host of things, time and time again. But when I see Republicans, Black Republicans who join the party and then are unwilling to speak up for Black people, they say a tremendous amount about who they actually care about, what they actually stand for, and it speaks volumes in terms of the polling numbers and the actual results in terms of Black people standing with Republicans.
Jamal?
You know, Roland, I've been in politics for a long time doing campaigns, and one of the things that I've always said to my Republican colleagues, if you guys can figure out how to get rid of the racists, you might be able to appeal to some Black people here. Yeah. You know, there's some people in churches I've been to. There's some people who are in business. There's some people who support charter schools. There are a lot of issues where you might find people who are looking for something a little more libertarian, a little bit more conservative, a little bit more pro-business, a little bit more economic entrepreneurship. But then the problem is, once you get started, then you find out that you're in bed with a whole bunch of people who don't want to see you actually succeed in the country or be a part of it. What we are is we are at a fork in the road in the United States. And what we are really having a conversation about is, are we going to have a multi-ethnic, inclusive democracy with norms and functions that allow everybody to participate? Or are we going to have a country where straight, rich, white men get the first cut of the fruit and everybody else gets what's left over? I think that's the fundamental question, and that is what we are going to be debating in 2018 and into 2020.
I want to pick up on that point, Jamal. Of course, right now we're dealing with Senator Mitch McConnell. We now have the numbers showing that the deficit has increased in a significant way. I thought they told us with a massive tax cut we were going to be seeing a shrinking deficit. Now all of a sudden McConnell says, oh, we've got to make these cuts to entitlements. Jamal, I'll start with you. That was always the plan. And that is you push forward this tax cut, you drive through that knowing full well it wasn't going to lower the deficit, because the game plan all along is that Republicans want to slash entitlements. And again, they lied. They told us, oh, no, everything is going to be well. when the reality is deficit is exploding. So where are all these fiscal conservatives who were all around the place when Obama was president?
Yeah, what they call it starving the beast. And what they want to do, what they've wanted to do for a long time, is get a deficit so big that everybody, like you said, everybody howls when they see the number. And then they say, oh, well, we've got to cut back on these programs in order to do it. The reality is the Republicans have been running a Republican jobs program for a long time out of the Defense Department. Yep. They put more money in the Defense Department and they spread around to all their friends. And then they do stimulus through tax cuts where they give to all the rich people who do well, hoping that some of that's going to trickle down on people, or proposing it's going to trickle down, even when it doesn't. This is the Republican game going back to Ronald Reagan, and Donald Trump is doing it on steroids.
Rena, again, I get fiscal conservatives. Senator Bob Corker, I will not cast a ballot for this if it's going to raise the deficit.
Yeah, you don't find any real Republicans.
I mean, we knew he was lying.
You don't find any real Republicans in the Senate anymore. And Corker, you know, he has the cover to do what's right. But the problem is big money has had such an influence on our politics. And I'm finding attitudes changing. I'm a fiscal conservative, but what has happened, and I'll agree with Jamal. I mean, that's a very good depiction of where we ended up where we are. You find some lone voices here and there, concerned, but they're libertarian sounding. They're Rand Paul. But again, going back to people like Corker who have the cover to do the right thing, they cannot, because there are cushy jobs waiting for them on K Street. And the influence of money has been so great in getting these people reelected that they're not sure whose interests they're beholden to anymore. And so what I'm finding in young Republicans is changing attitudes about Citizens United, about gerrymandering. And that's where my hope lies, Roland, is that, you know, eventually we're going to get to a position where we have realized that, and I was on Capitol Hill back in 2008, too big to fail? Come on. Where did we go wrong? Younger Republicans are going to start holding the older Republicans' feet to the fire and say, you were the reason why we ended up with this massive crisis. You should have let these big banks fail, but you didn't. And why we're where we're at is a series of unfortunate events, but bad missteps. And they go back to Clinton too, okay? Let's talk about some of those people that made some really bad decisions. Everybody needs housing. Come on. So there are a lot of bad actors here.
Glass-Steagall Telecommunications Act, 1996, all of those different things. Spencer, this is the reality. Look, if Democrats do not take control of either the House or the Senate, you're going to see Republicans drive a stake through housing, through food stamps, through SNAP, through Medicaid, through the Affordable Care Act, through Social Security. They're going to be focused like a laser on pushing forward these entitlement cuts. And look, I'm all about having efficiency in our programs. But the reality is, in the last year, President Barack Obama, a study was done that showed there was $125 billion in waste in the Pentagon alone. What did Trump do? We're going to give you guys another $700 to $800 billion.
Right, and this is so key in terms of investment in people, whether it's, you know, human services or education or other things that will actually allow us to grow, investing in Americans, investing in black folks. If you look at Germany, if you look at a lot of countries in Europe that are really investing in their workforce and investing in the future in terms of the workforce, we are going to be passed by as a result of the short-term thinking of politicians today.
Rashad, your comment.
I mean, at the end of the day, we continue to see, you know, wars, tax cuts, and then trying to balance the budget on the most vulnerable people, and thinking that, and a narrative that if the most vulnerable people pay more, then somehow we will get back to a sort of balanced budget, when in fact these tax cuts, these unfunded mandates like wars and other things have created a system where we just can't sort of afford the things that we're spending money on. And Republicans who have positioned themselves as fiscal conservatives, have positioned themselves as folks that are going to guard the pocketbooks, have actually gone on huge spending sprees that they've not been able to fund. But the fact of the matter is that this big tax cut that just happened will bankrupt a whole set of cities over the next couple of years. We're going to see then from there flows to everything from public education cuts to attacks on organized workers and unions, as if the unions were the problem of paying people a living wage was the problem, not these big tax cuts. And so this requires us to be organized, mobilized, going out and vote, ensuring that the people in office actually serve us. Because what has been really clear about all of this, and for any person on the left who's watching, is that while I don't agree with any of his policies, I would take a Mitch McConnell in a street fight over many of the Democrats on the other side, because he adheres to his principles. He drives the car forward. He lands the plane. And at the end of the day, we're going to need to elect Democrats that are willing to be unapologetic about advancing the causes of the people who put them in office, the way that the Republicans have been for their base.
One of my favorite phrases is, if you're going to swing, swing. All right, folks, hold tight 1 second. Going to a break right now. We come back. We're going to talk to Rashad about a Disney princess and the issue of colorism. That's next. Roland Martin Unfiltered, broadcasting live from Indianapolis, Indiana. All right, folks, first and foremost, we want to thank all of our sponsors for the show, and I want to talk about right now with freeprints.com. You can get 1,000 4x6 photos for a very nominal fee by going to freeprints.com. You can actually print your photos directly from Instagram, Facebook, as well as other sources. And look, you pay a small shipping charge, but you have no subscriptions or commitments whatsoever. You can download freeprints.com app on Google Play or iTunes App Store to actually get it. And do me a favor. When they say, where did you, of course, find this out? Use the code Roland. Use the code Roland. They're the #1 rated photo printing app in the world with more than 100,000 5-star reviews. And so we certainly want to thank them for being one of our sponsors here with Roland Martin Unfiltered. So go to freeprints.com, and again, use the code Roland. All right, folks, images absolutely matter in our world. What you see and what you hear, it really is the greatest export of America, what we send out all across the world. And folks are excited about this new Disney character. Of course, Princess Tiana. Of course, you remember this was in 2009. Well, she returns into a new Disney movie, Wreck-It Ralph 2. But yet there are some fans who are saying there's a problem here. What the hell happened? How did Princess Tiana go from being a dark-skinned woman with dark hair to what looks like Rachel Dolezal? What's going on? Well, Color Change, they also saw this, and Rashad's folks have mobilized themselves to say, Disney, back up a bit. We got a problem. Rashad, anybody who sees this goes, these are two totally different characters. Why is this a big deal? Why does this matter, Rashad?
Well, it matters for how kids see themselves. The images are so powerful, as you just said. But for young girls, young Black girls, young people of all races, to see Princess Tiana suddenly sort of change into a more sort of stereotypical Hollywood image that you see from the original image, which was so powerful and was so heralded, we reached out to Disney initially and really started beginning conversations. We walked through a lot of the research that we've seen on representations and images and how that impacts young people. And then we had a number of back and forth and then some face-to-face time with Disney. And I will give Disney credit because a mistake was made, but then they had to go through, when they made the decision to change Princess Tiana back to her original image, it was thousands upon thousands upon thousands of animator hours to go shot by shot, screen by screen in animation. A lot of money, they wouldn't actually say how much money, to actually fix it. And what this says to us, more broadly, is part of our larger work in Hollywood, is A, have the right people in the room in the first place.
Right.
Make sure that we are elevating and putting the right people in the room in the first place. 2, recognizing the power that images have. And we're happy that Disney did this, but part of the work we've been doing, whether it's the work we did with USC on looking at diversity in writers' rooms and the impact it has, or looking at right now we're doing a big report on crime procedures with USC and how the role of crime procedures and shaping how people see crime and how people see Black folks. Those are like the Law and Order type shows. All of this is incredibly important. And as you've made the point a number of times on your show, these are also jobs. This is an industry. And when people don't get those chances to move up, to advance, what that does for our community and a larger space. So we recognize this both as sort of like the economics of it all, but also the role that representation plays in shaping how we see ourselves and how the world sees us. There's written rules of policy, which we were just talking about, and there's the unwritten rules of culture. And all of those things matter, and that's why this work that we're doing, we have 3 staffers in Hollywood that concentrate on writers' rooms, on engaging with Disney and engaging with the other studios on a nonstop basis, working with influencers to give them talking points and messaging around voting and other issues. All of that is important for us reaching a new audience. I'm happy that Disney made this change. I'm happy that folks like my niece and other young girls who will go see this movie will see Princess Tiana represented, but I'm also happy about the conversation we're starting about the avenues that need to be opened up for more Black animators, for more Black executives, for more people in the room that will make sure that all this money isn't spent on the back end when people can be in the right positions on the front end.
Rena, you're a woman of color. I ain't seen Snow White change from one movie to the next.
So, look, this whole thing for me is hard because growing up, I sort of, in real life, looked at Connie Chung, a woman that doesn't look anything like me, as an idol. And then when I looked at Disney characters, looked at Barbies, that was tough too. And now as a woman in her 30s, I understand that representation matters. People make mistakes. I think this was a huge mistake by Disney, but I also don't know that the fix had to happen like this. And I realize that sounds a bit controversial, but let it be. Let things be where they are, because people are always going to have a problem with something. And I think when we empower young girls to understand that the world doesn't look like us all the time, we become better disruptors. And so I will agree with Rashad and say that essentially the best thing would have been to have the people making the decisions be people of color, people who actually reflect what the U.S. population looks like. But you can't get there if we aren't in professions that allow us to take risks, right? Like, what young person of color, what Black person, what Asian person is going to end up in roles in Hollywood when traditionally we haven't been there? It's a slow walk there, and we can't just fix things and act like everything's okay with one switch of a complexion shade. You know, it's going to take time, and we have to understand that harsh reality. That's where I'm at on this. It's mixed up.
They took a brown-skinned, dark-skinned woman and made her light-skinned. And they did that. And they didn't have to do that to the character in between. It's an animated character. It's not like they hired a new actress and it was an actress with a different shade. They actually physically changed the color of the skin. The history of colorism in this country, I'm not like landing this in some like ahistorical context. There's a history of colorism and what's beautiful and what's not beautiful. And sending that message is a problem. And actually, we don't get more Black people. We don't get more people of color in these positions unless we push. The history of civil rights has not been that corporations have suddenly opened their door and said, hey, come on in. It has been a struggle and a push and a fight. And that is part of what has to be opened up. And the folks inside who wanted to raise their voice will feel more powerful if there's organizations on the outside that can sometimes say things that they can't say, that can sometimes push in ways where you're on the job and you actually maybe can't be the voice every single time. And so part of what we recognize and what many folks of color have asked us in Hollywood to be able to do through multiple salons, multiple inside conversations. We're not landing here because people didn't ask us to show up. We landed here because people want us to show up. Many of them are our donors and give us money. And so we are providing a service to help clear the space in many ways, to help have conversations that couldn't otherwise have. And I just don't think that we get there by sitting around and waiting around and hoping that major corporations somehow wake up and start portraying us fairly. I do think that we get there by being able to have inside conversations, being able to have outside conversations. And as I said, be able to say that Disney did the right thing here. And they should be given credit for doing the right thing after they heard from the community, being able to hold them up that this is the right thing. I don't need to take a victory lap on them. But what I do need to say is that other companies need to take heed, that These are problems that oftentimes happen when you don't have the type of representation in the room that needs to be there.
No, I agree with the market pressure. It's got to be there.
About 30 seconds. I got to go to my next topic. Go ahead, Rena.
No, I completely agree. I'm not trying to be a naysayer, right? But I'm just saying it's systemic, right? And it can't fix itself. So I am actually complimentary of your efforts. I think outside organizations should put pressure on, but I don't think it'll be fixed overnight. And I mean, in this situation, it was a good thing, right? But there's so many other places, and I'm talking about beauty and lifestyle primarily, where I see unrealistic images. So on one hand, we see good things happening because of Color of Change, you know, changing the people who are actually producing the content, but then we have influencers and other people sending another message and also whiting out things in a way. So, I mean, it's just a really unusual moment where we see things happening that aren't in parallel, you know, to one another, that aren't really in sync. But I am all about market pressure and outside organizations doing their thing and bigger corporate giants taking heed. I just think it's going to be a little slower. I certainly don't advocate for sitting back, but I also do think. Yeah.
Well, again, Rena, it is going to be slower, but damn it, we're not waiting.
That's right. That's fair enough.
So, I think for me, after 399 years, I'm pretty good at waiting. We're not waiting. Let me do this here. I want to go to our next story. Simone Biles, she's shown her power. Of course, she is the best gymnast in the world. And when Mary Bono, former member of Congress, former Republican from Congress, of course, she is the widow of Sonny Bono. When she was named the interim president and CEO of Team USA for the gymnastics, well, let's just say Simone wasn't happy because Mary Bono sent out a tweet where she was critical of Colin Kaepernick and Nike, of course, him being the face of their Just Do It campaign. And she had a tweet where she said she had a marker and she was playing in a golf tournament for Wounded Warriors, and she blotted out the Nike logo. Well, when she was named the interim president and CEO, Simone Biles went to Twitter, blasted that decision. 5 days later, today, Mary Bono gone. Jamal. I'm sorry. So we lost my man Jamal there, but I want to go to Spencer. So Spencer, clearly here, this is black athletes showing their power. When the most powerful woman in gymnastics speaks, Team USA listened.
Right, and this is the moment that we're in right now where so many different athletes in different professions are stepping up to the plate, putting it on the line, speaking out, doing really what Rashad was talking about, right? Like not just going along with the flow in the program, but speaking out. We see it here, we see it in football, we see it in different areas. And we also see it in terms of these states where these NFL players are going in and changing criminal justice laws so that, you know, folks have more of an opportunity to get back in society. Sure. So I think that where we are right now is a space where we see athletes stepping up to the plate, and we now also need insiders. So we talk about electeds, folks who are in the Congressional Black Caucus, other places stepping up to the plate. It is possible. One of the pluses of a change in terms of Congress in November is you could see chairs of the Congressional Black Caucus, chairs as in terms of committee heads, CBC members as committee heads of education and workforce, of homeland security, et cetera. And there's this opportunity to step up and make some real change both inside and outside.
Yeah, you know, I couldn't agree more. You know, one of the buzzwords that's oftentimes thrown around is narrative change.
Right.
But how we get to narrative change is really the rules and norms of society. And folks like, you know, Simone Biles, Colin Kaepernick, many of these athletes that have huge platforms get to, in some ways, their speaking out starts to change the rules and norms. When Mary Bono blacked out her Nike, her Nike emblem on her golf shoes, and she thought she was making like a cute statement. She thought she was, you know, inside the right narrative, right? Right. Many people a year ago did not know how much the country would change because of what Colin Kaepernick, Eric Reed, and Malcolm Jenkins and so many of the athletes in the NFL did. And then along with NBA players and so many others standing up and speaking out. And so, you know, how quickly society and the politics around this has changed should be a reminder to anyone in power that when you put your hand on the scale of injustice and justice, on the side of injustice, when you put your hand on that scale, you could quickly find yourself on the wrong end of it. And to now have the biggest star in your sport, you are now in charge of the sport, the U.S. Area of the sport, to have the biggest athlete and one of the best to ever perform that sport in the history, tweeting about you because of something you did that you did not have to, you could have just kept your mouth shut. I hope that just sends a message to many powerful people about how society changes and whose side we should actually be on in these situations.
All right, 1 second. We had a major power outage, but so I am back. But I want to go to this story here. I talked about crazy white women on yesterday. You know, the ones who are acting a fool as... Say it again? So we had the story yesterday, folks, about these crazy white women who keep calling the cops on black people. You remember the Puerto Rican guy who went after the brother who was a Lyft driver? Y'all may have missed that video. Press play.
His night a living hell. You picked the right one, because I work very good, buddy. You picked the right one. Yo, boo, tell me why I'm in a Lyft and the nigga fucking pulled over. He pulled over, hold on. The nigga's recording me without my consent because the Lyft, because I asked for music and he's recording me. Look, he's recording me. So you can see. No. He stopped because he assumed because all I asked for was music that he got mad. I am, but we're waiting for the police because this faggot charged me. I'll see you in a few. All right.
Let this motherfucker
I'm not letting this piece of shit go.
Let him go.
The police is right there. I'm not letting this motherfucker go. Hello. I'm not letting this piece of shit go.
I'm American. Hello. These motherfuckers don't want to stop because, oh my God. Hello. Let this motherfucking nigga go.
I'm not letting him go.
Let him go.
Could I say one thing?
I'm not letting him go till the cops get here because I'm in my legal right.
Could I say one thing?
Well, Spencer, he don't have a job today. When are these people going to learn you keep acting a fool on video, you are going to be unemployed?
Yeah,
now he's apologized. I'm so sorry. Nah, boo. Too late.
That's right. And this just shows the power of technology in terms of changing race and really capturing race and what is there, you know, from another person of color here acting this way to this brother. Just the power of technology here. And getting back to this notion of athletes, though, I just wanted to go back. Folks saying, I'm not going to be just a performer. I'm not just going to dribble a ball and put on a show for you. I've got something to say. You're going to listen to me. It's a powerful moment.
Raina, again, crazy white women losing their mind calling the cops. Now you got this crazy Puerto Rican. Now he don't have a job. And I'm telling you, all these people, I don't quite understand how they somehow think that people are going to accept bad behavior.
Well, I think Spencer makes a great point about technology, but really what it's allowed people to do is sort of hide behind things, right? Like we have people hiding behind laptop screens, putting out filth on the internet, and whether it be in the form of trolling somebody on Twitter or in Instagram comments, like there's a lot of hate out there, right? And I hate to tie it back to Trump and what's happened, but when the president's out there putting on these rallies, calling people names, and I mean, just emboldening hate and racism, you know it's going to trickle down. Why are we surprised? Yep. This is crazy to me. To see this guy in the back seat, see a calm guy up front doing his job essentially, using video to protect himself. And where did we start to hate each other so much? And I think it's because we can hide behind devices times. And so therefore we forget that this isn't a person of color. This isn't a person who's providing me a service at whatever cost. These are people too. And that's what we forget. And just the language is what struck me in that video. I cannot believe that guy could feel emboldened to use the words, and multiple times. And it just ties to me to the moment that we're in of such hate and dysfunction in Washington. Yep. I know it's made its way down because I hear names from the bully pulpit like almost every day. And so we've got to push back. We've got to restore civility in this country, and it starts with our youngest kids, telling them that language like this is not okay, even though the FCC allows some of it.
Rashad,
well,
the guy, of course, Robert Ortiz. Rashad, one second. Rashad, hold on one second. The guy, Robert Ortiz, had a job with City MD, an urgent care company. He lost that. But also the Lyft driver, of course, he was suspended for a couple of days, opened a GoFundMe account to try to raise $20,000. He got some $45,000 in donations as a result. Rashad, your comment.
Yeah, I mean, this also, there's something here as a New Yorker about New York culture that a gay man is using the F word at the driver, that the use of the N word that's sometimes thrown around between Black folks and Puerto Rican and Dominican folks in New York. And the underneath it all, this sense of entitlement and kind of hatred of how we treat one another, how we deal with disagreements, how we talk to one another. I think that there's a lot to unpack here that's different, that's both challenging. Folks should lose that guy should have lost his job. I'm glad the driver got some money. And it's also different in terms of how we see white women, particularly weaponizing the police and calling the police. And all of these things are things that we're going to have to examine as we have to live next to each other and around each other and share space. And I do think that this is part of the project and the work of living in a multiracial democracy where there's accountability for things that you do wrong. There's ways and a pathway for us to get better together. And there's also just recognizing when stupid people do stupid stuff, and then we've got to hold them accountable. But the video is disgusting. But the work of undoing all of that is going to be much deeper than firing a person, giving a GoFundMe for another person. It's going to be a lot of work that requires all of us.
All right, then, of course. And Ortiz, y'all, he's apologized, said he was drunk, but he's saying the driver was the bigot, not him. Nah, boo. We got you on tape, boo. You the bigot, and now you don't have a job. Maybe you can call Donald. But also,
Roland, an openly gay Puerto Rican Trump supporter, I mean,
hey.
What?
It's a lot.
Well, maybe Trump can get him a job because he needs one right now. All right, folks, we do, of course, we have lost one of our hidden figures, Ray Montague, the trailblazing Black woman from Arkansas, who revolutionized the way U.S. Navy ships are designed, has died. She was 83 years old. Montague created the first computer-generated rough drafts of U.S. naval ships specifications. Her development allowed the Navy to decrease the time it took to create a ship's draft design from years to hours. Montague was also inducted into the Arkansas Women's Hall of Fame and awarded the Meritorious Civilian Service Award by the Navy. And again, in 2016, she became widely recognized after the release of the movie Hidden Figures. Again, certainly prayers go out to the family of Ray Montague as well. All right, folks, I've got to go. I'm here in Indianapolis for the Stewart Speakers Lecture Series with Reverend Al Sharpton, Susan Taylor, as well as Reverend Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. We're talking about what the state of Black America. And so I got to pop on over there and moderate this conversation. Do not forget, tomorrow I will be live in Memphis from the National Civil Rights Museum Freedom Awards taking place there as well. I'll be on the red carpet, so I'll be coming to you live there tomorrow as well. And then don't forget the great debate between me and Jason Whitlock of Fox Sports 1 taking place on Thursday live from Los Angeles. And so we've got a very busy week. Don't forget to share this video with all of your followers on Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope as well. So we look forward to you doing that. And be sure to support Roland Martin Unfiltered by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Lots of thanks to Rena, Rashad, Spencer, as well as Jamal Simmons. And thank you to all of our guests. And don't forget, Sean Shaw, running for Florida Attorney General. Thank you for joining us as well. All right, folks, y'all have an absolutely great day. Got to go.